Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast on health literacy 2.0 and workforce well-being. I'm really excited today. I've got two guests, Stephanie Szostak and Trina Clayeux, who are with me to talk about mental health and well-being, some very different angles to that. So I'm really pleased to do that. Stephanie, we met kind of, I guess, fortuitively through your sister-in-law, I think it was. And it's been a really nice experience getting to know you and learn a little bit more about you. I'd love for you to take just a second to tell people a little bit about your background. They may know you from one arena, but
Mhm.
really this new arena is what we want to talk about as well. But just give a minute on your background and how you've came to be where you are today.
Well, thanks for having us, Seth. My name is Stephanie, yes, and I'm an actress. That's my job. But also, I have a book coming out that is called Selfish, and it's a workbook for, emotional well being. The way this came about was because in my professional career, when my career started actually, getting better, my mental well being went downhill. And I didn't know what it was. I thought that I was just not able to handle the pressure. But I realized that I just didn't have mental tools to help me navigate a new environment, to even be aware of what I was, going through. And that started a journey for the past 10 years, really, of learning more about navigating emotions and learning new tools, practices, etc. My challenge was, how do I remember all these tools and how do I actually integrate them into my life? And so I created a tool for myself that I call a playbook, where I put all the bits and pieces that help me think better, feel better, do better. And every day I look at it to keep those reminders top of mind and to hopefully, have those reminders pop during the day and catch myself and recalibrate. And very quickly, to hand it to Trina, during COVID, I had met Give an Hour during one of my jobs. And during COVID, I connected with Trina and her team. I told them about the playbook concept. They liked it. And we did a series of webinars together to help people create their own playbook. And that led to this workbook.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to dig more into that in a second. But Trina, give us a little background on you and Give an Hour and kind of what your role is today.
Thank you for having me here. As you mentioned, I am with Given Hour, so I'm the CEO there, and we are a national mental health organization. We've been around for about 17 years, and we have, as part of some of our services, that we have these wonderful ambassadors. And it really gives an opportunity for people who have particular platforms or they have populations or individuals that follow them to really work at destigmatizing mental health and introducing new ways of thinking and engaging in their mental health. And so it's just been this incredible journey that we've been on with Stephanie to see her book and her dream be realized, but also to figure out ways in which we can provide these same tools and the book and eventually the app as a support and a service for people to think about mental health and engage with it differently. Sometimes we get lost in what does that actually mean in our day-to-day lives. So her playbook is definitely one of those avenues we're exploring.
Yeah. So, Stephanie, you and I have gone back and forth on your book. I really enjoyed it. And what I found really, really helpful about it was just as you said, it's a very practical way to kind of keep track and build your habits where we get a lot of theory, we get a lot of ideas about how to build skills or what have you, but this is just a almost like a recipe book, but a continued thing. We all have lots of recipes, but those cookbooks stay on the shelf, right? So
Yes.
yeah, this
I
is a
love that analogy. Think about it. It's like we used to have those boxes for our recipes. We have playlists for our music. We collect a lot of things that matter to us, but the tools that help us with our well being, we don't have a place to put them all. And we live in a world right now where we're so distracted from the moment we wake up, just from our own lives. We're all busy. That's the word, that I'm so busy, I'm so busy. And then we have information coming at us constantly, 24/7, news, text, emails, all of that. And I think, well, I know I've heard actually a doctor say recently that within the first 15 minutes of waking up, we consume more information that we did in 1 week 50 years ago. And what that does is it's harder and harder for us to focus on what serves us well. So if we have a place for all these things, When we're stressed out, we may even know what helps us, but when we're in a challenging moment, it's hard for our brain sometimes to access those things that help us. So that's the practicality of it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of taking science to practice. And the key is, well, the science is strong and we know a lot of information. How do we take it to practice in our daily lives? And I really enjoy this concept of a playbook. And it's kind of non threatening in a way because who wouldn't have a playbook? Isn't it kind of nice to wake up every day and kind of know what the playbook is and know how do I stay grounded, to your point? We're so easily distracted. And Trina, I don't know if the folks that you work with and some of the conversations also deal with that, but everyone is so burnt out and having emotional, issues. And I think part of it may be because they're distracted, to your point, Stephanie. So, Trina, are you seeing that, or how are you dealing with some of this?
Yeah, we do. We work mostly exclusively with populations who have had some sort level of trauma or some sort of traumatic experience. Either traditional therapy hasn't been their avenue of choice, or this is kind of a population that doesn't necessarily either seek out care, they wouldn't tell their primary care physician, and probably haven't had a lot of access to mental health resources that actually speak to their experiences. And so we work really hard on customizing literacy support, trainings, peer support, and tools and resources that actually are meant for them. So we spend time with the communities that we serve to really listen to what they want and need, and then curate the tools and resources that they actually say that are matter in their lives. And I think that's been just so key, is how we made those connection points so people can feel the relevance of this. And it again isn't this big conversation about mental health and I need to do this particular tool or this practice, but what are you already doing? Where are some of the gaps in maybe thinking about it differently or approaching it differently? But we're really trying to get it to fit into your life. So it's not a conversation separate from your life about like, now I'm going to do mental health, but rather, how can you incorporate and kind of underpin your day to day life with really good practices that come from you and that works for you?
And you do this in support of companies or
Yep. So corporations, my background is in workforce development. And so I've spent many, many, many years working with individuals and companies and working together to try to help with that best fit. Many of our practices right now is really looking at mental health in the workplace. And what we're finding through our conversations with both corporations and employees is that there's a huge perception gap between what employers think they're offering in mental health and what employees feel like is happening for their mental health at work. And so we're working through that perception gap because it's driving financial decisions and investments in the corporate side. And what we're finding is people aren't using their EAP. They're not using the, mental health day off. And so what we want to do is really hear from people who are closest to the work and understand what their needs are, and then tailor and custom support, and then also be able to make informed decisions as a business about how can you maintain that in a sustainable way. But it really has to touch people, like they have to actually feel like, yeah, this was made for me.
so, Stephanie, this is a good fit. I'll plug the book. I like the
Yeah.
book because I
Thank you.
found it a little bit different than
Mhm.
many of the there are great books out there that are how to build a good workforce, culture of health, what is evidence-based wellness. I've been doing that for my whole career. This is very much a playbook for the individual. And I feel like it's a good book for companies that are trying to roll out well-being programs or reinforce their well-being programs or send a message around mental health and burnout. I'm wondering if you have thoughts on how companies might fit that in and maybe even an example within the book, how it starts or a section that might be really relevant to kind of bring it to life a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. So the book is a series of 8 exercises that are self awareness. So get to know yourself better. So we're not telling you what to put in your playbook. Individuals, by answering each exercise, will create the content of their playbook. The first exercise, I think, is a great one to talk about because it's what are your greatest achievements? So let's say somebody who works in a high stress business and when they're having a hard quarter or a hard 6 months, maybe it's hard for them to stay motivated. And you can forget what you're capable of or what you've accomplished. So, what are your greatest achievements? Walks you through it step by step. List your greatest achievements. It can be your great wins, but it's also moments that you've survived where you thought you weren't going to make it through and you found a way. It's moments where you've helped other people. By doing that, then we ask you to look at what it took for you to get there. So then you all of a sudden realize, oh, these are my strengths. So you're coming to your own conclusion. And it's not just an intellectual exercise saying, what are my strengths? What are my values? It's by answering questions, personal questions about your life, what you've done, that you can identify these things that guide you. So, in my playbook, I work in an industry where there's big moments of unemployment and looking at my playbook and being reminded, oh, I did this, I had this job. And it brings you confidence. It can help you when you're in a moment where you're lacking confidence or you're
Mm.
not sure that you can go forward. And I think it helps all these personal content aspects that you're building in helps you create greater meaning in your life. Also, I think sometimes your sense of self worth and self value can be tied to how well you're doing professionally or to what people are thinking or saying about you or your review, or for me, what people are saying on Instagram about my performance.
Yeah.
Answering these questions help you understand your value from an intrinsic place and then not have it tied to things that you can't control.
I really like that because there's a lot of discussion about purpose and how important it is to connect to a personal sense of purpose and values. And does that align with your daily work and your daily life and how to live a purposeful life, frankly? And for me, I like the path that the guide took to say, okay, well, when was it that you did some things that you were proud of? And how did you overcome those? And how are you aligning with your purpose? Again, this is a kind of a playbook to live that purposeful life on a regular basis and to overcome those very challenging moments that you're talking about. And so I think leaders in an organization, but frankly, anybody who's trying to kind of stay motivated to address the burnout that we've talked about, many of these other issues, that this is a really good complement to a lot of different programs.
Yeah, and also, their companies offer a lot of webinars. People go on retreats and you leave those places, you're really motivated. This is why I created the playbook because I was like, I'll remember this forever, but then you don't.
Yeah, right.
And goals or skills that you want to practice, we forget things. So it's a way to not only, I think, help you in moments that you're down, but it's also a way to do the reps. And it's like little by little, you're making a difference. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I have changed the way I respond to this because every day I just keep reinforcing those good thoughts.
It fits really well with the behavior change model that I like to talk about, which is awareness, the self awareness, the skill building. But then what people forget about is the maintenance piece. So
Mhm.
it's really easy to just focus on the skills. How do I, cook better or how do I exercise? But how do I maintain that? And so that fits really well. And I'm sure, Trina, you are very focused on making it more than a one and done type of event.
Yeah, we always go in with the idea of sustainability and having things owned by the community that we serve. So, whether it's in the corporate America or it might be a veterans group, individuals impacted by a mass violence event, it's really about not coming in, moving people aside and showing them what we have, but rather working and sitting with people and really understanding what their wants and needs are, and then making sure that things match that and really help them in their journey and checking in. And so, in this example, we know in the corporate America side, attrition is incredibly high, especially direct line workers, folks who are really closest to the work. Those are very difficult, high burnout positions, whether it's in healthcare, if it's in IT, and any kind of industry. Basically, any kind of research that you look at is that mid level supervisor is really the make or break. And what we are finding is that the level of skill building around human connection and being able to coach people through some of these difficult times while also managing this very difficult position that you're in is where something like this would come in so well. And as you said, bringing awareness is really getting that person into the mindset of like, what are they bringing? What is the value that they have in the organization and as a human being? But then also we can start looking at what are particular instances in which maybe you deviate from some of that when you lose confidence, and they tend to be interpersonal, they tend to be performance related. And that becomes kind of the coaching place where people could add to their playbook about aspirationally, I want to be able to engage in really difficult conversations with an employee. And when it happens, I start to fall apart, or I start to, get nervous, or I get more angry and kind of more aggressive. And so we can help you really try to understand. We have the level set. We know what you're bringing, but now we're really scaffolding that. And so how can we do it in a way that maybe you haven't considered before, that really speaks to human connection? And at the end of the day, that is the perception gap, is that we're just not connecting on a real level.
So this reminds me, so the title of this or part of this has to do with health literacy. And so you guys know I'm hot on this topic. I think it's a big key to overall health equity. And I think that health literacy has been really stuck in this kind of 1.0 mindset of really flat, boring literature, brochures, where we can bring it to what I call 2.0, where we use behavioral science and gamification of learning, data to personalize and make the information relevant, and to have it in multiple formats, have small videos. Everybody's learning on YouTube. Everybody likes infographics. People like playbooks. They like a different kind of way to learn. So while I talk about health literacy, we're talking about mental health literacy. You were just talking about to be able to be literate enough to communicate with another in a respectful way, in a compassionate way, and yet a productive way, frankly. So I'm curious for both of you because the book is in a way a mental health literacy or an emotional. People are talking about emotional health, and mental health is a little bit different. And so are some of the things that Give an Hour is doing. So Stephanie, you have some kind of thoughts on how this might help people improve their emotional literacy a little bit?
I know it can help because these exercises, I didn't make them up. There are versions of exercise that helped me tremendously. It's self awareness, number one. So, understanding yourself, getting clarity on who you are, what you want, where you've been, what you're capable of, and where you want to go. And then what steps will help you get there. We all understand the importance of a regimen. People understand that, hygiene, physical fitness, and the conversation isn't yet that big about that we all have mental health and it's all linked. So I hope that the conversation gets bigger, broad, and I'm somebody who went through this. There's stories in the book from Given Our ambassadors, other Given Our ambassadors. There's stories of recovery, of PTSD, joy, and resilience. So I think the book will help people, will inspire people, and just help people to get to know themselves better and then create a tool, an actual tool that will last much longer than just the book and that will hopefully evolve with them as they continue to grow and learn.
I think it's a good fit, the kind of analogy of physical fitness. We all know how to get into that exercise, but how do we do mental and emotional fitness? A lot of people are talking about, well, I'll meditate, which is a great thing to do. But
I
really,
meditate.
yes, I suspect you do. But the idea that there's a playbook for your emotional and mental health as well as your physical health. And the book that you've written is actually expands to just overall lifestyle. But I'm curious also, Trina, how are you feeling like you help people with a little bit of that mental and emotional health literacy, as I'm calling it?
Yeah, I think it's tools like this and others that we are really looking at to make this accessible to people. And I feel like it has sat so firmly in this clinical space, and that, there's a place and space for clinical. But I think what we're trying to do is really broaden this to say that every one of us has a role to play in mental health and emotional support for ourselves and for others. And it's more of a continuum. And so what we think of is there's a place and space for clinical care, and it's really important. And it's not the only one. We've introduced help for provisionally licensed, really try to educate provisionally licensed on the populations that we serve. We have a network of about 4,000 mental health therapists who are contributing, across the country into giving clinical care. But then we also have peer supporters, which we, help train individuals who have a lived experience. Doesn't have to be a traumatic one, but have a lived experience where they're like, you know what, I want to actually learn a little bit more and elevate my mental health EQ so I could help someone else while I'm helping myself. And then we have wellness ambassadors, which again are, individuals who are like, you know what, I want to make a commitment to learning and knowing more about mental health. And there's so much noise out there about this big capital M, capital H mental health. And what we're really trying to do is get it down into a consumable level to say, no, it actually applies to all of us. All of us have mental health and everybody can benefit from different coping skills and practices. And we want to introduce them. But I mean, yoga isn't the answer for your mental health, right? We really talk about human connection as the answer to a lot of the mental health problems. And that is a practice that I don't know that we're practicing enough. And so having these tools where we can work through and script with you, not give you a script, but help you script it out is one of the more beneficial because it really reduces people's anxiety levels. It makes them feel more confident in control, more empowered about what they're going to do and engage in something that's difficult. And then over time with good practice, that, your body and your mind stop responding as heightened. And it gives you that confidence then to take on another task or take on another challenge. And so we really try to make it applicable to that person's life. And big components of your life is home, interpersonal relationships, work relationships, school relationships. So our big focus is really about how can we help people have better skills and better engagement with others.
I love it. You guys know I've been boasting that I just got back from a trip, and
Yes.
Sardinia was one of the locations. It happens to be a blue zone, which, for those of you who are familiar with that research, is the research that looks at the places where people have the longest lifespan. And Sardinia happens to be one of those places with the highest density of people who live more than 100 years old. And one of the keys to that is exactly what you talked about, Trina, which is social connection. And we know that it's challenging as you get older to stay socially connected. But now we're finding, even with, younger people, with virtual work, with all the digital technology, the simplicity of being connected and the art of interacting socially is maybe being lost a little bit. So the idea that, to get comfortable with yourself and how to make connections and stay connected seems fundamental to mental health. So we've covered a heck of a lot of ground here. Um, I want to just give each of you a little chance to kind of highlight anything that maybe we missed or that you want to emphasize. So, Stephanie, I'm curious, we just touched on the book and kind of how it might apply in corporate America and to individuals and really help with kind of daily practice. But anything else that you want to kind of remind us about or that we missed?
Well, I will say that 50% of my proceeds for the book will go to Give an Hour. So if you order the book, it's not only good for you, it's a good cause as well. But I will just say that, I've always been fascinated about human nature and the human mind. And I think that's why I became an actor. I am absolutely passionate about this. And if there is anybody out there who's listening to this, I would love to talk to people. We're creating an app right now, and there is nothing out there to help people collect all their takeaways. I think companies are investing a lot in the well being of their employees, but it feels like the effort is one offs. We're getting webinars, we're getting trainings. And I think having your own playbook can really help make it stick for you and help you integrate it in your life.
So it reminds me of one note, the title.
Yes,
Yes.
selfish.
I think it's so interesting because many of us might feel like it's a bit selfish to take care of ourselves and to take care of ourselves maybe before we take care of others. And we didn't really talk about that title much, but
Yeah.
I think in a way it's saying you have permission to take care of yourself. But I'm curious, what does that title mean to you? Why did you come up with that?
Well, I didn't come up with it, actually. This is the power of community. There's
Okay.
a branding company called LBB in my town who loved this concept and they offered to brand it. And they gave me a list of names because my name was the 180 Playbook. And selfish was one of the names. It jumped out because obviously it's disruptive, it's something negative. Nobody wants to be selfish. But there was something that I really liked because, like we say in the definition, taking time for ourselves every day. Some might call that selfish. We say own it. And it will help you reconnect to the best of who you are, which then helps you bring more of what you cherish and value to people around you. Nobody's great when, we don't take care of ourselves first. So that's the title. I love it. Thanks
I
for
love
asking.
Thank you. Trina, you're nodding your head.
Oh,
What have we missed or what comments would you like to reinforce?
yeah. I think, so much of what Stephanie said, which is our focus is really on individuals and communities. And if we're going to make any significant disruption in really what's happening in mental health, is that it has to be a collaborative approach and it will take business, it will take individuals, it'll take communities really committing to learning more and to getting good information and then being able to practice it. I think that's what you talked about, the sustainability and the longevity of it is it can't be a one and done. It's not a webinar. It's not a yoga class. It is a commitment to a lifestyle of seeking information and then doing the actual thing. And so what we really try to do is bring it back, but also contextualize it for people so it has meaning in their life.
Yeah, I've always felt it's important to know what the best practices are, what the evidence-based practices are, but it's all in how it's brought into practice. And that's what you're talking about. So I really appreciate this conversation. I do want to just note that anyone who's listening that may be going through issues like this, know first off, you're not alone. That's why we're all talking about this. Second off, there are many, many resources available to you through corporate and through your community. So don't hesitate to reach out and know that there is support for you. But on that note, I just want to thank both of you. Again, this was a really interesting and insightful conversation. I've enjoyed it tremendously. We may have to do a part two at some point, but thank you again so much for taking the time. I really appreciated it.
Thank you so much, Seth. That was awesome.
Appreciate you.